Hello again, Indiana high school football fans, and welcome back to Hoosier Prep Gridiron. We're back with another edition today of the Coach's Corner, where we speak with Indiana high school football coaches from throughout the state. Today, we are up in the beautiful Three Rivers Conference with Coach Michael Fenters, the second year head coach at Maconaquah High School. Coach Fenters, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. I appreciate it.
Great to see you again, Coach. Been a great year for yourself, for the kids, for the program. Before we get in, chat a little bit about where you're heading. Let's talk about this debut season for you and your staff. Came in, took over for Coach Tyler Campbell. Team had a solid 23 season, won 7 games, lost 4. All you did was come in and run the table 9-0 regular season record. Won the TRC conference championship, which I know is a big deal for all the schools in that conference. Even with all the member changes that we've gone through over the last couple of years, so many coaches still value that conference championship, which is really puts that focus on the local level. Team won a sectional championship, played long time veritable power Fort Wayne Lures, lost by 3 points in the regional, but I think you guys probably broke every offensive record in the playbook last year. So taking a look back, Coach, obviously, you guys have gotten all the accolades, all the awards for a great season. But what are your top recollections of that great 24 season for Maconaquah?
Yeah, I think everybody spent about every day of last season. I would see somebody in the hallway or see somebody in the community, and they'd first ask me who I was again. And then they would ask, okay, like how are the boys looking? And then, it'd go week 1 to week 2, and as we got through the season, everybody reminded me just how uncharted of waters we were in. Maconaquah hadn't won a TRC since the late 90s, early 2000s. They had never won a sectional title. So it really was, I guess, the fun part was the community got to be first time as well as me. And we all got to learn together. We all got to learn how a parade works after a game. We all got to learn, what does it mean to play in November. And there were some fun things we kind of learned along the way with that. And, looking back at it, putting up a first set of numbers in a high school gym is something that is so, for lack of a better words, romantic and special. And it really brings out what we do as coaches. And, the precedent that Campbell had set before me and the senior class that we had, I mean, you're talking about guys. Buddy Kyle is 4th in the state all time in receiving yards. You've got AJ Kelly, who is a perennial sectional and regional champion in the 400 meter, as well as, happened to just mess around and catch for 2,800 yards. And, oh, by the way, led the state in
Wow.
interceptions for a little bit. Brady Dausch is going to go down as probably our leading tackler. Comes off a torn ACL and still finishes the year playing defensive end in 4 games, had 17 tackles for loss. Which is just, I mean, it's staggering. It's mind boggling to think of. And for a program that, I know a lot of your listeners didn't know where Bunker Hill was, and that became kind of our mantra towards the
Mm-hmm.
end. When we took that trip to West Lafayette, that was my big stance to the guys is like, listen, just take a moment and look at our stands versus their stands, and they didn't bother to come to the game because, well, I mean, you're playing a school that nobody's heard
Sure.
of, that your
Makana
athletic
who?
trainer, right? Your athletic trainer happens to be the guy on this call right now, taping guys before games, and you've got like 5 footballs in the whole program,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, and I think they really embrace that, and my heart really goes out to the senior class. It goes out to everybody that was a part of that journey. I'd be remiss to think that we can replicate that because, again, the
Sure.
Buddy the Fuddies of the world, the AJs of the world, they're special kids. And I was just fortunate enough to be here for the ride.
Yeah, and you guys had so many high moments. I mean, even, during the regular season, after week 4, you're 4-0 after the win over Whitco. You got Purdue, Northwestern coming up, Peru, a solid 3A program. Nobody knew Northwestern was going to come on. You beat those guys by the combined score of 84-2. And I think at that point, you obviously knew you had something. A couple of weeks later, 3 weeks later, Rochester, a team that is always in the hunt for the TRC. You handled Rochester 30-14, and it was just one big win after another all the way throughout the season. And I got to tell you, I know you're a big internet guy, and you love the way that these guys are recognized online and on the internet. And the Maconaquah crowd, which was non-existent at the beginning of the season, became one of our biggest online support communities by the time you guys were playing for a sectional title.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we appreciated the coverage. With that, I know that you know the same way that we had to teach the world about Bunker Hill. We might have also had to teach the world about like internet coverage or our own community. We had to go through those things, how this works, and that was
Sure.
fun. And it the fan support that we had. We did things a little bit different. We had a midnight yell practice. And I remember like planning that with the community and saying, hey, I know this is different, but I want it to be a family environment. I want, everybody to come out, let's have a cookout, let's have the band, let's do it all. And that was different at first. But as the weeks went on, it was just like, hey, why not try, the next thing? And so, our kids started going over to the elementary schools. On Fridays and high fiving and just building that atmosphere. And yeah, we're proud to represent a fun fan base and a fan base that I think got to show itself for first time in a little bit. That was fun.
You bet, Coach. Let's look ahead here for just a bit.
Sure.
Looking at the current, everybody, a lot of the coaches we talk to, uh, nobody seems to have the exact same take on what spring football in Indiana is all about. Some run it like a college program. Some just throw the football out and let the kids play a little 7-on-7. Everybody else seems to be somewhere in between. What has been the focus of your spring, especially with this new level of expectation? The leaders who are coming back. Um, what did you and the staff really want to accomplish during this spring football period?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of change. So obviously we had the seniors that left, but we also had some coaching staff change. Austin Robinson ran the defense with me. He moved on and is working admin now, and in that was something that was a big challenge for me, or is a big challenge for me still, being kind of our only guy right now on that side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So that was been something I working with our defense this year. It's been a lot of classroom time. It's been a lot of cognitive. Hey, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to handle if I'm dealing with a head coach something? There's got to kind of be guys on the field. We often talk about football IQ, but we don't necessarily reinforce that. So our guys have been teaching the playbook and things like that to our own team. Separate them into groups. The linebackers teach, hey, this is what triangle read means to the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the guys in the locker room. And that's been a really fun process for me because not only as a teacher do I get to watch that and kind of have a cool moment of, evaluating teaching from a 15, 16-year-old, but now, they're becoming more accountable with each other. And now it can be a lineman that says like, hey, I saw the guard pull. I know what you're supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
or hey, a DB can talk to my guys and do the same thing. So that's been kind of a fun change is that cognitive development. I would say that, to me, spring football in the world we live in right now, everybody has to be a recruiter. That just is what it is. I know that term is got a connotation to it, but
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where we're at. And I think that recruiting means, making sure your environment's fun and it's a family and guys want to be involved with it. For me, that's what sports was, and that's what I wanted to be. So, a
Sure.
lot of our things have been in the weight room, coming up with friendly competitions, right? And in our 7-on-7 work and things like that, always ending with some sort of drill that's, whether it's it went viral a little bit, but there was college that did cones on the back of defensive linemen and they were trying to swipe it
Mhm.
off. So one of our guys saw that, showed it to me, I think the morning of a workout we were going to have. And I was like, okay, I guess we're spending the last 15 minutes doing that because that's awesome.
Sure.
And so, just doing little things like that. The install part comes, to be honest, in my opinion, at least, if you install a bunch of stuff in the spring, the benefit would be that if you had team camps in early June, you're
Hmm.
good to go. Um, the we don't. And so, because most of our summer competition dates are going to be a little bit later in the summer, we feel pretty comfortable with just, hey, let's deal with how we teach things. And then after that, let's kind of have a little bit of fun,
You bet. Sure.
build that family atmosphere, and then we'll teach the football stuff when it comes.
Good, good. Hey, Coach, you touched on recruiting, and obviously the college recruiting game has changed quite a bit. And as your program continues to elevate, you're going to have more kids, that are going to want to move on and play at the next level. With NIL, with the transfer portal, what do you see changing in the recruiting game, and how is that affecting your kids? You've got a couple guys that 3, 4, 5 years ago, with the numbers they had, would be a no-brainer, to maybe walk on at a Big Ten school or go play in the MAC, or certainly, a Indiana State, a Wabash, a DePaul. It's getting harder, it appears, for a lot of these guys to get spots because everything is being pushed down. And, a lot of the major D1 coaches now obviously are looking more for that 22-year-old transfer
Mhm.
than that 18-year-old fresh high school senior.
Yeah.
So, how is it affecting your guys? And do you see this kind of pretty much as the new trend going forward?
You know, I think you made a great point that 5, 6 years ago, Buddy Kyle's numbers would have given him an open walk-on tryout, or at the very least some sort of consideration from many of the major programs in our state. And I think the first issue that I'll be very transparent that I don't know the answer to. Social media and how we present information has been really really challenging. Coach Yurevich spoke about this from Ball State at a clinic I was at. He talked about that with the roster number shrinking at the collegiate level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's 110 is what it's going to be or something like that. If you look at how many offers exist from D1 programs and you actually did the math, there are some D1 programs that offer 500, 600 guys when they have 110 roster spots. So it either means one of two things. It either means that it's that disingenuous, right? And that there is this commodification and all those things, or it just means that if a kid is at a camp and a coach from a school says hi to them, they could interpret that in the world we live in as like, well, they love me, you
Right.
know?
And
And that's
offers
not
coming.
to, right. And that's not to belittle a student athlete. I would be excited if, if any coach came up to me too. Of
Mm-hmm.
course. Um, so I think that that's the first challenge is your kids see so many other kids getting offers that they start playing the, well, I did better than him at this game, or I
Mm-hmm.
did this better, or so on and so forth. So that's been kind of a challenge. Um, and I think the other part of the challenge is that, because that commodification has started to occur, um, there's a fine line between a player having agency and wanting to kind of control their own destiny and those things. And then also, unfortunately, taking some steps maybe that's going to be detrimental to their long-term development and ultimately the long-term development of a program. With Indiana having the transfer rule it does, um, I don't know I don't think anyone can accurately predict what the long-term impact of that's going to be. I
Sure.
will say it almost immediately changes the identity of what is a team and what does it mean to be a student athlete for a specific school. We're a small 3A school, borderline 2A population wise. And when we were really successful this senior year, if you look at our football team into our basketball team into the spring sports, well, Buddy Kyle and AJ Kelly happen to be three sport athletes.
Hmm.
And Brady Dausch happens to be a multi-sport athlete. Austin Ringeisen happens to be a multi-sport athlete. And you start looking across all those spaces and you realize that that's what makes us successful is when all of our kids are together, hanging out, whatever. So the way that we're combating, I guess, the commodification or we always talked about like solo sporting or specializing. The
Right.
way we're dealing with commodification now is in the summer, all of our kids work out, whether they're basketball, football, soccer, baseball, I don't care. They're all with me in the weight room. And then they go to their sports specific session. So we've worked with the teams here that we're not going to schedule anything on top of them. They're not going to schedule anything on top of us. And
Mhm.
ultimately, our goal is hey, I know it's basketball today, but your friends all go over there. Why don't you go play?
Sure.
And by doing that, we kind of build that sense of community and family
Hmm.
within. And I think that's one way to do it, hopefully at our level. And then if
Okay.
it doesn't work, I guess I'll come on here and say, hey, it didn't work. Don't listen to me.
Well, it appears to be working pretty much across the board, Coach. 12-1 tends to put a little bit of a target on your back.
Sure.
You're not going to be seen as a lower division TRC team now that's trying to work your way up or a mid level. You're going to open the year as a favorite. You're losing some key pieces from this rise. What is the expectation going into the 2025 season? And do you feel you've got the kids in place to make another run and maybe push for another sectional this year?
Yeah. I've told the kids that the burden of establishing a new standard and the burden of putting numbers up is that unfortunately, the only thing you've earned is strife from other opponents. You haven't really earned the ability to win week one. You haven't really earned the ability to win a TRC, a sectional, whatever. All you've earned is that creeping of having kind of bold confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, everybody knows when you're playing them. They know when you're scheduled. For us, week one, I promise Wabash not only knows because it's week one, but they know because of how the game went last year. They know because of those things.
Sure.
And I think the biggest challenge for us is going to be how do we answer that bell with several of our key, not only guys not being here, but the positions not being here. When you talk about AJ Kelly, on his offensive side, he's as impressive as you'd imagine. But on the defensive side, think about him on that perspective. I mean, there aren't many corners that I can say, okay, put your best guy over there. That's fine. I have my best guy, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
That confidence in your guy out there, it happens over time. But ultimately, AJ was on the field for the majority of the season, and whoever steps up in that role, well, he wasn't because AJ was in that spot,
Right.
right? So I think that going into this next season, I've probably been more honest with our guys than maybe some would be in saying that that's great that all those accolades happened. Turns out it does not matter, and all it did was establish that possibility for legacy. And this year, I think how we establish the legacy is we do the same thing we did to start this year. We get rid of the expectation um, when it comes to the guys we had before, and we're just open and we say, okay, people are going to doubt this team because of who we graduated. Great,
Right.
do
Mm-hmm.
that. Use that as motivation, and then from week one to week two, and so on and so forth, we just keep it that insulated because something we've talked about a lot as a team is that when you have a year like we did, learning how to lose is a big deal, and we all know it as coaches.
Yeah.
And one day, that's going to happen, and that's okay because that is part of what we agree to as sports. We
Sure.
agree to that relationship. We agree to that idea.
Great
How
point.
we handle it and
Hmm.
how we move forward or how we try to prevent it in our preparation. Now that is something we do different, and that's establishing a legacy. So, I tell you what, the TRC is going to be competitive. Wabash got the best running back they've had statistically that
Hmm.
I know of, at least for them. You've got a Northfield team that's always tough as nails, and playing option is I personally love option as an offense. I absolutely hate stopping it. And then Peru being the rival there. I mean, the single wing will come and punch you in the mouth, and they have every reason to want to. You've got Turnip Seed at Northwestern bringing the kind of tempo from Jeff. They're going to be a
Oh yeah.
spread to run team, but they're going to tempo you at some point. They're gonna spit the ball out quick. So that's going to be a challenge for our DBs and things like that. And then all the way through. I mean, obviously we get the luxury of playing Lewis Cass and Rochester towards the end of the season. Lewis Cass, by that point of the year, I mean they've can probably blindfold run wing T,
Uh-huh.
and they could put out their fourth graders and do it. So that's always a challenge defensively because they'll make you wrong whatever you do. And then finally with Rochester, I mean, Ron what he's built up there is really impressive. And they're tough kids. They're they're not necessarily the fastest at times. They're not necessarily the most on paper, daunting figures, except for Vance, I suppose, a giant
Hmm.
kid.
Sure.
But you know what? Like they get after in the weight room about as good as anybody, and it shows. And playing them in the late season is always going to be tough. And
Yeah,
then
it's
adding
a
Rochester.
it's a great little conference.
Yeah.
I think when Tippecanoe Valley left, there were some questions about, well, who's going to assume the mantle, and I think you've just got a lot of depth and balance in this league, and even your team with the roster you have coming off the year you have, you've got four or five pretty solid challengers
Yeah.
that are gonna give you guys a run. Coach, it was a great run last year. It was not only great for the school and the kids, but great for the fans, great for us in the media to watch. And you got a great crew over there. We wish you the best of luck this year. Have a great summer and looking forward to seeing you again this fall.
Hey, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you having me on, and go Braves.